everybody, and welcome to Magickal Journey Podcast. I am your host, Daniel Cahoon. I can tell already the settings are not right on here, but that's okay because you know what? It's going to happen tonight. Welcome to the podcast with the longest entrance in the history of podcasting, according to a recent comment I got. Tonight, I want to thank you guys first of all for showing up. It's Friday, it's summer. People are usually out and about, but you guys are sitting here watching us, and I'm grateful for that. Just a little bit of let's do something right quick here with this. I'm totally going by intuition and hope tonight. I gotta tell you, because it's been that kind of week. So I'm going to, first of all, let you guys know about the current updates. You can reach the website with the old address of magicaljourney.com, or you can reach the updated website with magicaljourneypodcast.com. Stew on that for a few minutes and try to figure it out, but don't have an existential crisis. It's not all about that. The other thing I wanted to bring to your attention tonight, before we get started, Tom's show, The Eye of Jupiter, will be starting tonight after my show. He changed his time around, so those of you that didn't know that, just for tonight, because his guest is Sarah. If you know Tom, you know who Sarah is. So you guys pay attention, check it out, and be ready to support and watch that episode because it's going to be a really good one. All right. Without further ado, I am going to bring to the stage Fire Lotus. Hey.
What is up?
Dude, you know what? I gotta tell you, this has been the most interesting week. How are things going with you?
Oh my God, same. The most interesting week and then the most interesting day. It's just been crazy and insane, but not necessarily bad.
Right. Same. I feel that all the way around. Like I was looking at the settings. I flipped into another studio right quick for an upcoming episode to see if it was having the same issues this one is. And because it keeps changing all my settings for some reason. Like there should be things that are not on here that are, and vice versa. But it is what it is. It's not that big a deal. It's mostly my thing. I do want to hold on a second. This is going to drive me crazy. So why is it not even? Oh my goodness. All right. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are, just in case somebody sees this and don't know already.
Hi, hello everybody. I'm Fire Lotus the Witch. I'm a practicing witch who practices different styles of magic, and I'm also, which is a newer thing, I'm also a channeling medium. And it's kind of me. I'm 32 and I live in Florida and just trying to figure out what life is.
I feel that strongly. And you have some social media that you're on as well, right?
Yes, you can find me on my Facebook page, Fire Lotus the Witch. You can find me on YouTube, Fire Lotus the Witch, Instagram, Fire Lotus the Witch, TikTok, Fire Lotus the Witch, and basically any other platform, Fire Lotus the Witch will pull me right up.
Awesome. So the key is Fire Lotus the Witch. Just put that in the browser and you got it.
Yes.
And you've been around long enough that you probably are all over Google now.
Yes. If you just type in Fire Lotus the Witch, typically I think it may have changed. I think my Instagram pops up, and then I think my podcast, and then my YouTube.
Awesome. That's great. Because I know if you can figure out all the ins and outs of the search engines, you've got it. I am
Oh yeah.
still not there yet.
Oh, trust me, I'm not there either. Their technology is advancing so fast, primarily like the websites and stuff where they're constantly updating. And then
Mhm.
it's like you have the entire system down and then you wake up and log into it and it's entirely different. And I'm like, what is this? But okay, we'll figure it out.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. So recently, I was having a conversation with one of my moderators, and we were talking about show ideas and things coming up and things that I really needed to um, hit on in the shows. And one of my moderators, I'm sure we know who I'm about to say because
Yes.
she is like one of my main eyes and ears of the web, Pam.
Yes, she is
Uh,
amazing.
she's incredibly amazing. Mention the fact that I have not done an interview with you talking about paranormal experiences. Actually,
There's
do
Go ahead.
you want to know a fun fact?
Yeah.
The last time you were on the show, I was brand new. You're like literally interview number 5.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Oh, that is cool.
yeah. So give us a little bit of background story here.
So I was born and raised in Alabama. I've been able to see and perceive spirits, although that has changed as I've gotten older. One of the very first encounters that I ever have, and this is actually exciting because I haven't let anybody else know this. The story that I'm about to tell you, I recently actually got verification of the person who actually visited me. So when I was younger, I was in my crib, and for some reason I was crying, and this woman appeared. And when I say woman, it was kind of like from her stomach up. I was a baby, so like I didn't see her legs or anything, but she was almost made up of like the mixture of like if you have a window cracked and the sunlight's coming through and the dust is like settling like that, mixed with like almost mist. And she had her hair wrapped and she was consoling me. And for some reason, I went from crying to I was happy as I could be. It's the very first thing that I remember. And as I was growing up, I would tell my mom, I would tell other members of my family, and they were like, "Oh, that's cool. I don't know who it is." Come to find out, it was actually either my aunt on my father's side or my great aunt. And the cool fact to this was she was actually one of the only ones that could console me if I was crying when I was a baby. She could just show up and boom. And I learned this recently because I have a half sister and she randomly hit me up out of nowhere and the mediumship thing came up and I mentioned that and she froze and she goes, "Yeah, that's your aunt. I think her name was Christy." So that kind of, obviously when I was younger, I didn't really know what it was, but I had imaginary friends. There are moments and times where I used to, and I still do to this day, I'll sleep with a blindfold on because when I was around the ages of 11 or 12, it got to the point where these figures would just show up and they would stand around my bed. They wouldn't say anything. They didn't have any features. So I would put the mask on. Another experience that I had that I want to touch on because I don't exactly know what it is. So if anybody else has had this type of experience, I would love it. Where I was born and raised at is right next to a national forest, and my school was on the other side of that. So to get there, my bus had to go through all these historical places, kind of countryside mostly. And there was one day, and I think I was in the 4th grade, and I always was the weird, quiet kid who like sat alone. And I was sitting there staring out the window like I always did. And all of a sudden, I could hear the children and like, the sounds of a bus. All of a sudden, that got quiet. And as I'm looking out, this bluish fog starts to roll in this one particular property. And on this property, you have like a kind of a 1-story country farmhouse. And then right next to that, you have this plot of land that I'm assuming was a garden or a field. And then there was this old school like barn on the property. So as this fog is rolling through, all the sounds around me completely stop. And for a split second, it felt like time stopped because as I looked back out the window, I wasn't in a bus. I was seeing people with historical like clothing on, and one of them was they had I don't know the proper term for it, but they were basically dredging up the dirt, and it was being pulled by a mule, and like historical and everything. And then as quickly as I realized that I was seeing this, to me it felt like 5 minutes. In reality, it's probably a few seconds. It just stopped. The fog came, the sound started to return, and the next thing I know, I'm sitting on a bus. And I don't know if that was like paranormal, or if I like something set up perfectly to where I kind of pierced through to the past. And then through that, believe it or not, I used to be very afraid until I turned 13 and something kind of clicked. But I kind of through looking through the paranormal stuff, like on Discovery Channel and the Travel Channel back in the spooky season, they would have all these shows where, like, you know, they'd go to the haunted locations, taps, ghost adventures. I grew up watching all of that, not fully understanding, oh, wait, I see dead people. And I never kind of figured it out until I got 11 or 12. And that's when I started kind of breaching and learning about witchcraft. And through that, I was like, oh, well, wait, I can do this. I can do that. But it took me until I was about 28 to kind of come to the terms that I'm a medium, a channeling medium, and kind of trying to figure that out. But along the way, so many creepy encounters. I think the creepiest was when I moved down here with my partner, the property that he used to be on. I've experienced on that property, I experienced every single thing that you could potentially experience when it comes to like categorizing the paranormal. And still to this day, the property was sold. There was a family who was supposed to move on to it. They had all these great plans. It is still currently sitting there completely untouched.
Oh, wow. You know, Pam brought up something. Do you guys hear crackling when I'm talking tonight at all?
I don't.
Is it just on my end? Maybe it's just on my end.
Oh, a thin veil. Yes.
It's very possible it could be something with like the veil thinning, something strange like that, because I've had several experiences recently that were kind of, I don't know what's going on. Really don't. But it's very interesting that you brought that up. So when do you attribute these occurrences with where you are now in your life? Do you feel like that the paranormal kind of guided you into where you're at?
Yes, 100%. Without me realizing it, it just because when I was younger, about probably 16 or 17, I used to live in Anniston, next to Anniston in Oxford, Alabama. And me, my roommate, and the partner that I was with at that point in time, we would go out on the weekends and go to these haunted locations. And what we would do was I would go try to record whatever I felt. And then we would get home and my partner would try, my ex would try to research like any information that we could to try to build onto that. And then I decided to do a meditation that I thought I was ready for. And that type of meditation is by Christopher Pinzak. And it's basically you view your shadow self. So not necessarily like the shadow work that it's on TikTok, but the kind of every aspect of yourself that may be holding you back, fear and stuff like that. And while I was doing it, I had one of the most intense moments in my entire life. I was sitting there meditating. There was a moment, this sounds crazy, and I think I've said this before, talked about this before. There was a moment where I felt like I levitated for a split second in that meditation. And the next thing I know, I'm there, I'm vibing, I'm like very close to meeting my shadow self. And next thing I know, I get yanked out of this deep, deep meditation. And as soon as I opened my eyes, the apartment that we lived in right up this slope was the city cemetery. And there was a light fixture right next to a grave. And as I look up and meet this, I see this crouching all black figure, as in it looked like it was made of darkness. It wasn't evil, but it scared the teetotal crap out of me to the point where I experienced not only fight or flight, but my entire body froze while simultaneously my entire body was like, you need to get up and go. And for the longest time, it messed me actively seeing like I used to up because it put fear there because I didn't understand what it is. Now I understand that more than likely it was just a very old, either elemental or just a very old spirit, and they were curious. But because of that, I still to this day, I perceive spirit differently. So a lot of the times when I'm communicating with it, like my partner's mom passed away when he was 13, way before I never met her. And it is the weirdest thing because she will randomly just pop in at these weird moments. And I'll look over at my partner and I'm like, yo, your mom wanted me to tell you this. And there have been some awkward moments where we were in a heated conversation and I had to throw that out. But instead of me seeing them now, I primarily sense them. And then I kind of see them in my head versus full body apparitions. But it's still weird because even though with all the books that they have out there, and if anybody is watching this and you're trying to kind of hone those abilities in, the best advice that I can give is, besides a couple of exercises, books are not going to get you anywhere. And the safest way possible, you need to put yourself out there with introducing yourself, because yes, the books are helpful, but what I've realized through these years is that we all have the translator in us to perceive spirit, but everybody is going to perceive spirit differently. So if you try to set yourself up with this specific exercise and it doesn't fit your body, it's going to frustrate you. So try to put yourself into a situation where you can naturally access that.
100%. So, not that I believe in reading books by any means. And this is just what you can see. We're not going to talk about the two other bookshelves, and there's a couple of piles of books, and it just.
That's what I was about to say. I'm surrounded by books as I say that. So it's kind of, it's like how they say with like crystals, you get addicted to crystal. You get addicted to books too.
I never got addicted to crystals. They're nowhere in this room. So you're laughing because you know.
Yes.
So here's the thing with reading the books and so forth, like you said, there's good knowledge in books. Don't get us wrong.
Yes.
But in all honesty, it is about practicing. Even like, so I I do research and investigation. People always ask me when I find out that I have a podcast, and then inevitably it comes up, um, how I got involved with the paranormal, and the conversation veers into investigation at some point. And I tell them, I'm like, you know what? There's some really great books out there. Although I will not, there's a couple of them I actually own, not because I thought they were great books, but because I just really wanted to read them to see if they were as horrible as I thought they were. And they are. Um, one of them is from a well known celebrity in the paranormal community. I'm not going to mention Zach Bagan's name.
I knew it was going to go there, yeah.
Is Ghost Hunting for Dummies.
Mm-hmm.
It says it all. If you read the book and you there's some good stuff in there, do not get me wrong, but if you read the book and you think it's the best book ever, please leave a comment down below. I want to know who you are. I want to have a conversation with you, because while there was some good stuff in that book, and it's not the only one that's on my why did you do this list, there's just some stuff, the way it was, the For Dummies part is part of it. That format was funny 20 years ago.
Yes.
It's not funny now.
Mm-mm.
It's actually kind of, it's kind of redundant. And even though the original formatting of those books had some very good tips and tricks and stuff like that. It's just not worth it. Not worth
And
it.
with that, I do have to add something. When it comes to TikTok and social medias, please be careful with who you're learning certain things for, because there are some people that portray themselves as, for one, I believe witchcraft wise, even medium wise, there's no such thing as an expert, because we're constantly, there's not enough time. But there are some people that will tell you, hey, you can do this and you can do that, and it will open you up. Another question that I get is like, Ouija boards, are they worth it? Do they really work? Yes and no. It depends, but there are certain other divinational tools that some paranormal researchers use, like the pendulums or the dowsing rods, where if you're not properly set up and you come across the wrong entity, that is a direct portal to you to where it can attach yourself. And if you go thrifting, yard sales, stuff like that, that is the quickest way to have a spirit come into your house, because objects hold energy. And you know what? I'm trying to find something that's not some random like pin or something, but like, it holds energy. So it gets weird.
Look, I'm going to go there, right? So, did you see last week's show?
With Elliot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, we're just a daredevil there. I'm like, oh my God. Like, brave, very brave. But with that, I got to tell you, again, I remember even what Ellie said about don't do as he does in some ways, because you have to be knowledgeable, and they're very knowledgeable about what they're doing. So if you're new to the game, you got to read that rule book.
Yes.
You can't just like walk in and so again, like Ellie has been, gosh, she's been working their path too forever. Their path has been forever too. So even though like, is Ellie's not close to 30 yet. So are they like somewhere in the 20, 25 range maybe?
A little bit younger, actually. I believe they're like
Yeah,
21 or 22.
21 to, yeah, just very young, that has been around enough and knows enough to know what they're doing at this point.
And to be honest, I've had moments where I'm not encouraging anybody to do it, but there is these moments, and I feel like a lot of us went through it when we were a little bit younger, and or may go through it now, where there's this aspect where like I had somebody be like, hey, I have this haunted doll. I didn't know anything about it. They're like, my friend gave it to me. Weird shit happened. I don't want it. Do you want it? And I was like, I want to create a curio of haunted things. So yeah, I would love to. They sent it to me, and it was basically the in New Orleans, the like kind of I can't think of the word. My brain is not braining right now. But like you're visiting there, and you're walking through like a little store, so you just pick up something, a novelty item, and it's a novelty voodoo doll. So they sent it to me, and I'm like, all right. I put it in my altar. Not a single thing had happened. It's going on almost 2 years. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it became active. And I was like, whoa, okay, you're there now, still processing that. But there's this aspect where it's almost like when you take somebody on an investigation or to a haunted location that's never had an experience, they've always heard it. And it's kind of like they want to have that experience to kind of prove to them, oh, yes, this is real. So I kind of do get like randomly going out and grabbing something and like, haha, it's not haunted. And all of a sudden you start experiencing stuff. Like when we moved here, it kind of what led to all of this, which I don't know if it's spirit or more extraterrestrial. But we, in this room right now, we slept in here the very first night. My partner woke up having sleep paralysis and saying a dark figure was hovering over him. I didn't have that, but I kept having these sleep paralysis moments. And that led up to where for almost a week and a half, we were both having different experiences, but we were actually having the sleep paralysis. And what led up and kind of put everything around, which is one of my very first Facebook posts on the Fire Lotus page. The door, we moved in, and at that moment in time, we were sleeping in the living room because the AC was right there. And I woke up with the sleep paralysis, and there was a curtain that led into the kitchen. It was a purple curtain my grandmother gave me. It's still there, just in a different place. And I have bells, witches' bells on a door. So I had them hanging there, and I heard the door open, and we live in our older trailer. So I could hear and feel something walking in here. So that automatically got me scared. Next thing I know, it was weird because it was like I couldn't see it, but I was having flashes in my head. And I see this gray hands, very long fingers. It almost looked like a mummy, almost like dehydrated almost. And its hands reached over to open the curtain. And right as I could almost see its face, I woke up out of it, but I actually saw its face in my head. It scared the teetotal shit out of me. And that's kind of what led to me doing everything online and kind of put myself out there, because I was like, I need to know this. What is going on?
Hi, Sai. So thank you for coming in, first of all, because I believe you're fairly new.
And hello, everybody.
Is this your first night? It may be your first night here because I don't recognize the name. So, Lotus, would you consider yourself neo-pagan?
The way that I explain to people, I primarily consider myself a spiritual witch, and I do have to emphasize this, more old school spiritual and not necessarily the new age spiritual. And I'm a witch further and foremost, but I practice different styles of magic. I do work alongside deities, but I do not worship them. I primarily work with my spirit team, my spirit guides, and my ancestors, but I do work with specific deities. I used to call myself pagan, but now I'm just like, I'm a witch. So.
Oh, wow. So, and then I'm a walking contradiction. I refer to myself as a Christo-pagan. And that's a whole theological conversation for another day.
Yeah.
Yes, we are very glad you joined us. You actually confirmed something to me just then, because I was wondering if those links were really, like, those posts were getting very much attention. That you just answered that question. Obviously, you found us through there, so it's important that they continue to happen so that other people will find us as well. The haunted guitar, I like that idea. Never thought about it.
Yeah.
But being a musical type, like, I enjoy music, I could see owning a haunted guitar and enjoying it somewhat.
It would be cool.
Depending on who was attached to it.
That too. Which here at the house that we're staying at now, I've turned into a spiritual bathhouse, is what I call it. So, like, I don't have a lot of spirits popping in and out, but I do client stuff, and sometimes they just kind of gather around. So I have it set up now where any wandering spirit can come and go. I just make sure that there are certain things that can't come in, because I don't like the term demon and how people use it. Hello. Because, like, yes, there are things that can go bump in the night. There are things that can completely make you have nightmares and do all different types of negative things. But there's also a lot deeper things than that. It's just not black and white. There's a lot of mixes, if you would. And then paranormal wise, I think the coolest thing that I did, and I probably should not have been doing it. I used to live on this farm, and I was basically the farm hand. So the way that I paid my rent and stuff to live there, I would work around the farm. And I lived in this barn. This apartment it was a barn that was converted into an apartment with 3 other people. And one of us, I think my roommate, or it was maybe me, we were gifted something from another practitioner. And a lot of crazy shit started happening around the property. So we grab it, and I don't like saying I did an exorcist because I'm not Catholic, But I basically did the version of that where I cleansed the entire property. But there was a cool moment where I freaked 3 other people out. They already knew, they lived with me, so they knew that I was into things like this. We found the item. I burn it. The fire turned blue and green. And then I'm going to take it outside because they had this perfect place right next to their chickens where there were 5 perfect pine trees in a perfect circle. So I was like, all right, natural circle, let's do it. So I go out there, and as I carry it outside, every animal on the entire property started losing its mind. So I dug the hole, put some salt there. So I kind of layered it. So I dug the hole, put salt, and then I placed the burnt object there with all the ashes, and then I put salt on it. As soon as I covered it up, the entire property went dead silent, and every animal stopped. There were a couple other crazy things because at that point we were trying to film it. Unfortunately, I don't have the footage of it anymore. But that was the moment where I myself was like, okay, maybe there is something here. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll figure that out along the way.
Exactly. As I see that this in itself is part of the thing, figuring it out along the way.
Yep.
I think a lot of people think that those of us that have been around for a minute just have all this endless knowledge. But this is why we're telling you, though, to make sure you know something before you start sticking your toes in the water.
That and
yeah.
Oh, no, I don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
That, and most importantly, and I have to say this, articulate it correctly, because I use the term faith, but for some people that could be like church. You need to have some type, if you get into the paranormal, especially if you're going to historically haunted locations, you need to have something that you fully, without a single doubt, that you believe in that can protect you. Because all the symbols we wear as witches, paranormal people, whatever you identify as, the only reason those symbols work the way that they do is because we believe that they have power. And it's just like in the Exorcist movies, and I don't know why this is a story plot, but all heck breaks loose, and they're like, you know what's a good idea? Let's call the priest that's completely lost faith. Let's call him in. He gets there, he holds up the cross in the Bible, and he starts reading it, but there is no power behind it because he doesn't necessarily know what he believes. And that's when you get into a situation to where things can go south, because when it comes to paranormal things, especially the more negative thing, most people believe that if they go to a location, they can just, boom, automatically be possessed. I believe that it goes through steps. First, you have to be oppressed. So it's going to do everything it can to lower your protections mentally, physically, and emotionally. And then it's going to find a specific end, and it's going to pop in and slightly attach itself. And then over time, it's going to dwindle you down until it can fully kind of manifest in different ways. It's like poltergeist. Poltergeist, most of the times when they're created, some of the more historical ones that I've researched, it involves a small child. The reason that is because their emotions, when they go through like teenage years, it's all over the place, and they have psychokinetic energy that builds up. It kind of hangs out and then eventually turns into things. That's also why we cleanse, not necessarily to cleanse out the spirits, but our own psychokinetic energies can build up. We give off strong emotions. Those emotions can build up and can cause other things to happen.
Exactly. And I think, first of all, Tom, hey, I want to say hey to you because we just had a conversation a while ago. So it's just good to see you in here. And remember, guys, again, Tom's show is at 8:30 tonight. You didn't miss it if you don't know yet. One of the things that I find really important when it comes to dealing with, and I agree with you about the thing about possession. Actually, when I started learning about exorcism and what it was, and went through that whole period of training, it is very true that in all the cases that I know that have been documented of exorcism, There was the spirit of oppression before there was possession.
Yep.
And it starts with people seeing and hearing the entity, maybe experiencing things like knockings and scratchings and so forth like
Yep.
that, various manifestations, because the ideal is to try to bring vulnerability in, bring fear and doubt in. Um, Tim, hey, you're in here too. Good deal. I thought I saw you pop in. Um, the the underlying experience is crackling. I'm glad you guys can't hear this because I hear it clearly, and it's making me crazy tonight. Um, the the bottom line is, though, is when you're dealing with uh, any type of experience like that, uh, objects can definitely cause,
Issues.
if you have it, if you have something attached to it, it can attach itself. It can become part of your landscape uninvited. So I think it's very important for us to understand that. Um, I think it's very important for us to understand that we can invite things in
Yep.
unintentionally in a lot of ways. Um, I love it when one of the easiest things is to have somebody else around you who
Yep.
oppresses you.
Yep.
That's why toxic people are very dangerous. That's why
And
you,
that And
yeah,
remember, your house and your properties, you can set those boundaries where if you do randomly get at 3 a.m., you hear somebody knocking on the door, don't open the door, whether you see something or not, and set that boundary and be like, hey, you're not allowed here. And when it comes to those toxic people, 100%, because they could be the keyhole that allows that presence in.
exactly. You really want to make sure that um, that you've got, first of all, that you're on your game all the time. That especially like if you're susceptible, like, do you find it true that people who are more susceptible to paranormal experiences tend to be people who attract these types of energies?
Yes. And the reason that I believe that is because, and then there's a story that I can tell that kind of ties in with anxiety. It kind of led to something else here in Florida, but it was a cool experience. Um, the way that I explain it to people is, again, most of us, we all have that translator. We all have that psychic ability. Some don't realize it and just never tap into it. Others do. When you tap into that, it's like it goes from a flicker to it goes to a full flame. And there are things out there that, whether they know what you are or they're just curious by the warmth, the light of it,
Mhm.
they are drawn to you. And then it's also similar to where if you ignore it to a degree, it will eventually go away. But there are moments where when you acknowledge it, it's like, oh, wait, you can see me, you can sense me. Okay. And then the word gets out. There's another theory that with haunted locations, you can go to one and it's just the normal spirits, the residual spirits, like normal, non harmful or anything like that. And over the course of, say, 10 years, the people there are like, for some reason, this darker presence showed up. And it almost is like this one darker thing shows up and becomes a bully. And it's like it bullies them around. And it's been recorded over and over again, which I find fascinating because I'm like, what about that sets that up to where it moves into it?
Exactly. Um, just a moment of shameless promotion here. I do want to encourage you, if you're watching tonight or anytime coming up, and you are a habitual offender when it comes to watching the show and you have not subscribed yet, click that subscribe button so you'll
Yes.
know when things are going to happen here, because you never know when you may miss a show that you really, really want to see. Tonight's show. Next week, we have Trey Hudson on with the Meadows Project. You won't want to miss that show either. Click subscribe. All right. So, with that said, um, let's talk for a minute about so what we we tend to want to lump paranormal into, or anything unusual into paranormal. I think that's an old school theology, because back in the day we didn't have a lot of these terms like cryptid. We knew about cryptozoology, but we didn't have all these things like cryptid and communities where we talked about, the abductee community and all this. We were just like, everything was just weird shit.
Oh yeah. And 100%, there's a lot of things that get kind of thrown in with paranormal, but I don't necessarily say it would be paranormal. And then there are some things where I'm like, that's 100% paranormal. And it's very weird how they did that too. With me, I present paranormal as in it is a spirit, whether that was a human spirit that has transitioned or if it is something else entirely. But like when it comes to an elemental or a land spirit, I would not necessarily say that that is quote unquote paranormal.
Right, exactly. So I had to so Pam put up a link to Jenny's website, and of course I had to show my mug off. There's a
Oh,
lot of
yes.
glare, but this is an absolute beautiful mug, and I love my cup. I love my cup. So anyway, um, I'm trying to learn to engage with my folks, because at one time I used to get so carried away with the interview that I forgot that I had an audience watching.
I also forget that there's an audience. Hello, everybody.
It's so bad. It really is. Um, and speaking of which, Jenny, you're right there right now. Again, this is always here. It never leaves this desk because I don't want anything to happen to it. So I got fresh water every show, thanks to you and Mike. Um, the thing with the paranormal that I wanted, so I like to think there's a broad sense of the word paranormal, which we still kind of use to umbrella everything. But then there's this subcategory of paranormal as well. So when like in your case, you've had um, both paranormal, such as ghosts and spirit experiences, um, experiences that could be extraterrestrial in nature.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but then you mentioned too, and we've talked before about you have visitation sometime from land spirits and elementals and so forth. You've mentioned that, which are, I honestly, I don't know how I would classify those. I,
It's weird. It's also like the time slip moments where it's like you slip back into time. And I get the paranormal because my definition of paranormal is just the unexplained outside of whether it's a ghost, extraterrestrial, cryptid. Because a weird tie-in with that is there are like the Conjure House. The one of the daughters who lived in there, they have a book series out and kind of they chronologically documented what they experienced. It's called, the first book is called House of Night, House of Light, or it could be the House of Darkness, House of Light. In that, they also experienced and or stated that they had an experience with a doppelganger, but they also had a couple of extraterrestrial experiences. So it's somehow, even with cryptids, it's somehow they all blend in or overlap in some way, shape, or form. And I think it just has to do with like y'all said earlier, the veil thinning. And I don't think we fully understand what the veil is. It could be the veil to the spirit world. It could be that the concept of time or the concept of the reality that we view thins out and it glitches and you see something entirely different, like another dimension or something like that. But it's somehow all connected. And I have not figured out how yet, which I don't know if I ever will, but hopefully I do.
I don't. I think we're all still. There's so many questions that don't get answered. Yeah, exactly. I think it's very important for you to make sure you guys. I can't express this enough. Like, if you are not in a healthy state of mind, if you've had,
Yes.
if you're tired, if you haven't been doing self-care, if you are having, if you have a cold, there's so many things that you need to make sure you don't have. I'm sure that was a cat.
I was about to say, I did hear that.
I'm sure that was a cat. Although you never know. I've been very fortunate since I've been here. This house is not like the last one so far. Talk about paranormal heyday. That was.
I remember the interview that we did, I think on TikTok, or the live that we did on TikTok. I remember that.
Do you remember some of those episodes, those lives that I did on TikTok where there would be stuff happening and like there was the one thing where like that is a cat. Because I just heard it again. There was a point where for some reason all the flames on all of my candles started, every time I would light candles, they would turn violet color every single time. Like there's a video on my YouTube channel still of some of those, one of those in particular, because something just popped out of the flame one night and I thought it was maybe how sometimes like the wicks will do that. Somebody else told me that didn't look like a wick to them. And then in the same video, if you look really closely, there's this little speck of light that's doing this weird zigzaggy thing, and then it flies into the flame.
See, that's cool because spirits can use candles. When I do my readings and other things, I have a specific candle that I'll light. That way it gives them more energy. Because it's so weird. There are some spirits who know exactly how to do it. And then there are other spirits, like some of the best days that I can connect with spirit, it's either actively stormy or there is some type of overcast and some type of like thunderstorms or rain is going to happen. And I think it's the exo energy that storms give off that they can tap into. See, I would love to go to Waverly Hills. At the same time, I would not go to Waverly Hills.
It's expensive to go there. Ray, you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The Paranormal Rejects went there for one of their investigations. It's expensive to go there. That was one of the first places they went to. It's very pricey, but it's very worth it.
The craziest experience that I've had like that and haunted, when I first got down here, my now father-in-law was getting married and it was in St. Augustine's. Because this was before I really got into, like when I was younger, I kind of got out of the like ghost hunting thing and like sensing spirits. I was just focusing on my craft and I did not know what St. Augustine's was. I knew that it was one of the oldest operating, still standing places. Well, we go to the wedding. It was great. And as we're leaving, it's just me and my partner walking back to the truck and they're having this giant fish festival. we got sidetracked and we went through the historical, like original, like settlement stuff. And as we're walking through it, I experienced my first ever panic attack, while at the same time, I had to grab my partner's hand because, and this is going to sound weird, I was tiptoeing. There was one moment I would blink and I was here in the present. There was another moment where it was like everybody, it's kind of like earlier where it's like that time slip where I kept seeing overlays of the spirits around me and I had no idea what was going on because I didn't realize that I could like sense spirits like that. And I don't really go to a lot of historical old places. And that's kind of what led me down this rabbit hole of really deep diving it and trying to connect with spirits. But I would tell you one thing, I have not, still to this day, I have not tried to go to a very historical haunted location just because because there's moments where like you or anybody else, you really, especially if you're still in the developing stages, there are these moments where you don't realize how much you can tap in because you're not necessarily trying to tap in. You're just going about your day. And when spirit shows up and has something to say, spirit is going to relay that in some way, shape, or form. But it was the most intense thing I think I've ever experienced. So going to like the Stanley or something like that, I don't even know if I could physically do it just because of the energy. And then it's also not just with seeing, you also sense and you can pick up their emotions too. So it's weird.
Yeah, I have to be very careful when I go into places. Like I do a lot of preparation before I go into places. The last investigation that I went to was the Night House in Kentucky.
Oh.
I've got 2 more investigations lined up in Kentucky coming up in August, I believe. But that was the last one that I went to. And the one before that was in Pulaski, Tennessee at Antoinette Hall, downtown Pulaski. Very interesting places, both of them. The Night House is very interesting. It has a very interesting history to it. I will say that. So let's talk for a moment because we're coming up on the hour mark. Let's talk for a moment about you kind of brought in the idea of all things being possibly connected, which is a common belief now with people. There is a lot of different schools of thought on that. Can you expound on that just a little bit more and give us your final thoughts on the paranormal?
Yeah, so I believe all paranormal is, and everything that we mentioned, the way that I view everything, from cryptids, the fae, all of that, I believe that it's different planes of existence, or more specifically, different frequencies. They all overlap. So when we say, like, as a medium, I'm not constantly being bombarded by spirits, but they're always here. It's like omnipresent. They're here, but they're not here. And I've had spirits tell me, hey, come on, speed this up. I have other things to do. So I'm like, okay, just because you are a spirit, you have other things to do. But I believe that in some way, shape, or form, it's all different levels of frequency or energy that are human selves, because even when it comes to sight, we can only see certain colors. We can't do like birds and cats where they can see ultraviolet light. And I believe there are moments where it's kind of the veil that separates it, to where, depending on what you're doing, depending on if you know you're doing it or not, because a lot of paranormal, more time slips and things like that, it happens because they're not expecting it to happen. And I believe in some way, shape, or form that they're all overlay, and they're just very thin spots, like in the Appalachians, in a lot of the state parks or the natural parks. There are portals and or rippling effects of where it's just very thin. And this is going to sound very, very new agey, but I do feel like that the more that we advance technology, there are a lot of groups of people that we don't like it because I feel like it takes us away from all of our ancestors. I'm talking hundreds of thousands of years. They knew something and they were tapped into something that we were not. That's why you have all of the same lords, the legends with the fae, vampires, all of that, dragons even, throughout the entire world, entire places that never met. And with us, if you look at our bodies, we have all the elements. We are made up of all the elements that stars are made out of. We give off psychokinetic energy, and we can attune that. For the people who don't understand that, I guess it'd be like breathing exercises. Breathing exercises or meditations, the reason they work so well is because you're altering your perception by altering the amount of oxygen that's going to your brain. Same with most people think when they see witches of dancing in a circle around a fire. The reason you're doing that is you're changing the energy, but it's also there's this conception of it's an in-between. So if you were to go outside and hold your arms out and spin around and around and around, you're eventually going to start seeing things because you're tapping into the in-between. Same with casting a circle of protection, as above, so below. You're creating the small little pocket outside of that. And I believe when it comes to haunted locations, that there's a lot of things that go into it, but for some reason it is either an echo of the spirit or in general, the spirit is not necessarily trapped there, but there's something that's anchoring it to that. And through practice, through investigation, and in tuning our bodies to it, we can tap into that and kind of see beyond what we're seeing now.
Definitely so. Okay, so once again, remind everybody where they can find you online, and also you're doing readings too, right?
Yes. So thank you. So Fire Lotus the Witch, you can find me on Instagram. And I have two, Fire Lotus the Witch and then Fire Lotus the Witch podcast, where I just do the podcast thing, which I got to get back into that. Fire Lotus the Witch on YouTube, TikTok, Fire Lotus the Witch. And I do mediumship readings through Oracle readings. And I also do custom spell work. If you're interested in that, firelotusthewitch@gmail.com. And then through my email, I do mentoringships, or if you randomly have a question, if I can answer it or if I can find resources for you, I will give you the best advice that I can and help out in any way.
A fae garden. Do you want to touch on that one really quickly for me?
Yeah. So
too good to let go
depending on where you're from, as in the culture and your beliefs, I believe the fae is everywhere. And the tips that I can give you is at any point in time, do not thank them because they find it insulting. For some reason, they also do not like chocolate. They love honey, milk, and possibly oats. They also love butter. But basically, just kind of talk to them. I view fae almost like land spirits, but they're different kind of species of them. Never make a deal with them, as in never say, hey, if you make my garden so luscious every Friday, I will give you milk, because our mundane lives can affect that. And at any point in time, if your stuff starts to disappear where you lay your keys down and poof, they're gone, I would typically go outside and just say, here's you an offering, milk, butter, something like that, and slowly build up that relationship. But also know that it's different than like working with a deity. It's different. Land spirits and fae are different than like normal spirits, because you kind of have to learn them. And there are some that will not want anything to do with us. But typically I've learned that if you just talk to them, introduce yourself and say, hey, I want to make a garden here, or hey, I would like to make this little sacred space for you. You can go to Dollar General. They have affordable little decorations, and just talk to them. And over time, you can build that relationship. And there's so many benefits to them too.
Absolutely. Well, thank you definitely again, Fire Lotus, for coming in tonight. If you'll give me just a moment, I will meet you back in the back for just a moment before we go for the night. But I want to go on and close this out right quick.
And thank you for having me on again.
100%. Okay, thank you guys for showing up tonight. Again, another great show. I felt we had a lot of great people coming into the chat tonight too. You guys are amazing. I do want to touch on, I wanted to make sure before I said this, but the original Bob Mackey's Music World there in Wilder, Kentucky, was actually demolished on December the 10th of 2024, unfortunately. It's apparently going to be rebuilt in the same location. There's also a temporary relocation in Florence, Kentucky right now for the bar until they do a rebuild. So I think it was probably torn down because of the condition of the building itself, maybe it sounds like. Anyway, with that said, I appreciate you guys. Again, for any updates, because there's a lot coming up, please check out my Facebook group, Magickal Journey Podcast on Facebook. I think I finally changed that. Definitely look me up on Facebook, Daniel Ian Cahoon. My Facebook page is a business Facebook page on there, profile. So you can find me on there. And I'm going to have to go back and tweak my link tree because Pam just told me tonight that there's some stuff going on with that. So I'm going to go and check some of these things out in the next day or so, maybe a week from now. But I will get all the links back up and running again for you guys. And if you have any questions about one of the social media sites that you aren't able to get a location for, hit me up on Facebook or Magickal Journey Podcast at gmail.com. And I will answer those questions for you. Meanwhile, you guys have a great weekend, a safe weekend, and may your journey always be magical.
I've waited for so long to see when you come back to me. Through the wars and battles that were lost, we're born again, it's you and me. The rest is history. Past lives. Past lives. Did we dance together on different floors in 1500 or 1504? We must have been lovers. We must have been something in our past lives.